This video is sponsored by Squarespace, the Antoine Dupont of website builders.
I genuinely believe no side in this Rugby World Cup means as much to their people as the national teams of France and South Africa. It's now 8 weeks since I arrived in Sweet Paris, and it's been a genuine honour to experience that unalloyed amour the French feel for Antoine et al. Fabion's Funny Bunch have connected with the nation in a way no 15 de France ever has before. Depictions of Dupont around every corner, Aldrit and Untermark on every ad break, and emotions at an all-time high as they headed into the business stage of a home tournament, knowing destiny was on the cards, knowing this is their big chance. And yet, if anybody could match their fervour, admiration and downright importance to the mood, spirit and heart of the nation, it's the Springbok team captained by Sia Bloody Khaleesi. Sunday night's encounter between the two was always going to be special, but what we saw might have just transcended the sport. Perhaps more than any other match this tournament, Sunday's late night encounter between the Springboks and France mattered. This was a battle between two sides with millions at their backs behind them, fighting to prevent heartbreak, week-long emotional hangovers with people they'd inspired to fall in love, and to get there they produced possibly the highest intensity, highest quality, most entertaining, dramatic, and I'm going to say it, maybe the best game of rugby I've ever seen in my life, genuinely. And I've seen a lot of rugby matches. That's right, this was better than the 14-3 clash between Connacht and the Newport Gwent Dragons in November 2012. I'll go as far as saying it. This was a game that could only ever end in heartbreak, and yet it gave us every single goddamn reason that we fell in love in the first place along the way. So how did the Springboks pip the closest, tightest, most ridiculously brilliant game in maybe World Cup history? And what, if anything, did France get wrong? Sunday night's game was played with an intensity that would make Jackfruit Sexwig chug a box of Xanax, and at such a pace you could get motion sick from just reading someone live tweet it. And whilst the two attacks and corresponding defences are getting very deserved credit, I think a huge part of why Sunday night's game was more breathless than Jean-Luc Godard running a marathon was because we saw perhaps the two best displays of tactical kicking of the year faced off against each other, both opening up the oppositions beautifully. It's now been 5 years since Rassie Rasmussen's bald buddy Jacques took over the Springboks, and it's been a legitimate privilege to watch so closely how the pair have built a team that really connected to the Rainbow Nation like never before. Khaleesi, Colby, Mapimpi, Am, Ox, I could go on, have changed what it means to be a Springbok, to play rugby for several generations watching, but as Rassie would say himself, they achieved this through a focus on the main thing, on the game itself. There's no ambiguity over this team's identity ever. Erasmus a big believer in putting 80% of your time into the 20% you're best at, making it even better. And this showed in those social, psychological, emotional elements of following the game. The mission to the Springboks: find out what makes you you and become the greatest version of that you can. And so the Springboks were assigned with a very particular set of strengths that sit perfectly to counter the things that France do best. So the key battle on Sunday became, can Les Bleus prevent the Boks from accessing the core of their game, that huge defence, the dominant rock, solid set piece, and the constant flow of momentum, the way they kick in order to keep on top at all times without sacrificing France's own grip on what they do best themselves. During that first half sans souffle, France had the ball 19 times, 19 passes of possession. 4 times they scored, another one ending in a missed shot at goal from Thomas Ramos. Twice they were turned over, but on the other 14, France kicked the ball. However, instead of leaning into one tactic or another, Galtier's gang played one of the most beautifully varied kicking games I've seen in a very long time. I divide those 14 towings into 9 different categories, 9 different kinds of kick. He's executed this number of times, with France's favourite, surprisingly, being this little attacking stab off Dupont at 9, such as here. This is a pretty good kick by the Boks at first, with both centres chasing the kick. However, they end up sucked into the breakdown, something Jalabert notices immediately. He goes for one phase quickly to set position in the middle of the field. The Boks split their defence into 2, then from the centre field, ruck, but both centres are on the same side rather than one on either side to organise each end. And sure enough, Jalabert has positioned himself on the other side and Dupont can tuck it over. Mostert is the only Bok to turn, the half-cheek hamster hitting it far enough that Jalabert's added pace on Mostert will make a difference, allowing him to regather before Dupont doubles up with another lovely dink for BL Barret to chase, almost resulting in a try or at least a scrum 5. This was something France were really watching out for the entire game, really alert to. The Springboks defend incredibly aggressively. They rely on 2 centres to turn around and essentially goal keep any chips, dinks or grubbers. So if they can get those centres out of the game, it suddenly opens up a great chance to pop it over the top. However, this wasn't just an attacking weapon. It wasn't just a chance to make ground. The Springboks build their defence around what each player is best at. The wingers using their pace certain attacks, normally shooting off the wing. Faf's an annoying little prick who just seems to just be everywhere, like bloody sand. And the likes of Mostert, Etzebeth and Dutoy fly out of line to make huge aggressive hits. What France look to do with kicks such as this from Dupont is change that. Suddenly, the forwards need to defend like centres rather than what they're best at, slowing their shots in case the ball goes in behind them, whilst the wingers need to stay wide or risk a cross kick exposing them, because that's a real legitimate fear for a lot of wingers. Beyond those free chips, France hung 2 high bombs, 1 off 10, 1 off 9, and 1 grub in the 22, but otherwise Labeler found endless ways of just getting the ball long, looking to push the box back, putting them in positions where they'd have no choice but to kick it back to them. Because South Africa traditionally kicked shallower, focused on the regather and pressure, they knew this could have a disproportionate effect. Where out of their own 22, France looked to hit it long and in field, the Boks here hang it high, hoping to win it back afterwards, but when Ramos gets it, it's an easy attack for France. Even Etsebev is a key part of how the Boks chase. He's always sent on like a chaos mission, just smash the ruck and see how it slows the opposition ball down. But if he doesn't get the chance, he then sets on the short side and just manages the defence here. However, after Ramos takes it in, Dupont sets a basic pod and sends it into Antonio, a man big enough to be one of only 3 mammals worldwide to not fear running into even Etsebev alongside polar bears and actually know it's just polar bears, and it gets him and Khaleesi out of the game. This pulls Colby onto the fringe of the ruck. Dupont's body language was selling a look in field, only for him to then draw and give it to Penno, who chips over and almost regathers to score. South Africa look for touch on the clearance, but can't get beyond the 22, eventually leading to Ciro Bai scoring a second try from pick and drive. Because watching for these kicks is a real legitimate fear for a winger, but one that has been overcome ever since Kurtley Arendse headed to Squarespace. Scared of Dupont's ability to drop pinpoint cross kicks with either foot, Arendse figured he better build a support group, get the chance to talk to some other wingers, and so he made a website, putting together a beautiful site in just minutes. It took him about 4 of them. He's very fast. He was able to publish schedules for the group, create forms for other terrified wingers to fill out, to share their availability or feedback while they're here in France, to all have a meetup. Able to write blogs with coping strategies, ways to cope, ways to get round those chips and adapt to it. Start a newsletter with cat pictures to reassure everybody that's about to play France. You know, it won't be that bad. Hey, have a look at a cat. And share everything easily with social media integration tools, getting the website out there to as many quick boys as possible, as quickly as possible, allowing them all to check in regularly and see what's cooking in Winger World. And if you want to start your own support group for, I don't know, like locks that have to compete in lineouts against even Etsebev, just like Arendse, then please head to the link in the description to visit Squarespace today and use the offer code, if you'd like to, Squid Rugby, which will save yourself some money on a beautiful, stunning, lovely website, such as the one that Kurtley Arendse he made this. Kurtley Arendse made this. I asked him. This kicking game is then compounded by how good France are on the pick and go. Their incredible ball presentation leading to the submerger formation where they bring in big boy after big boy straight up the guts, condensing a defence. It's a range of small things that totally change the Springboks as a defensive prospect. This is a great example. Jalibert runs it back and Zalonta's pick and go means the Bok pack concentrate around the ruck. Now, if they weren't worried about that, all these players can be an extra step or two out, allowing Arendse to be right out on the wing as his support group told him to be, and hence able to shoot in and cut off the pass between Jalibert and Penno. As it is, they can only drift. Pollard steps up to watch the extra man from the backfield, but because France have leaned so heavily on attacking kicks, Colby has pelted it across from the far wing here, so on the next phase, when Jalibert calls out the back, he's totally opened it up with no winger in position. He feeds to launch, but this ball, if it gets one pass wider, it's potentially a try. As it is, it's all stopped just a little bit short. But it did somewhat click into gear in the lead up to the second try, scored by the unbelievable Peter Malvaka. France play an initial few phases off 9, Jalibert not touching the ball, building to here. Jalonche carries and Flamont clears way beyond the ball, making the Bok forwards have to run an extra yard or so to get round the short side, which buys Dupont a second here. He feeds Ramos, and each Bok defender is then watching for a different option. They're watching for a different thing because France have varied their game, particularly their kicking game, so much in that first half. Willemse has come up to anticipate an attacking kick. Dutoy is going for the usual aggressive hit on the 10, and Arendse is shooting up towards Jalibert, expecting him to make the big play. It allows a simple miss ball to take them all out, and the next phase, having got up to the 22, when Jalibert finally calls it to himself, Moster is slower to make a decision than usual, second-guessing himself, allowing France to get it wide with a sloppy offload. By the time they get into the pattern the pick and goes, the line is so disorganised, the Bok in an unlikely position here by the ruck, giving Etsebev so much to do. France make it up to the try line, and because the Bok pack is simply watching too many options. Penalty given, Dupont takes it quickly, and Malvaka scores in the corner. However, this wasn't just a one-way battle, because for every smart idea France had to try and make themselves the only team in the game, South Africa had another to impose themselves onto the Stade de France harder than a running track that means you can't see anything if you sat down the front. And so we come to this. One of the hardest stills in Rugby World Cup history. Willemse called that scrum from the mark on the 35th minute. Up to that point, South Africa had fed just one line out in the entire game. They'd fed just one scrum. The ball in play time for that half was around 22 minutes in total, which was just 4 minutes shorter than the entire game when these two played a year earlier. It was enormous. It became pretty well documented around that line, so we've all tried to forget that the Springboks are conditioned for lower ball in play. Hence the whole bomb squad idea. Players are built to last 50-ish minutes, not the full 80, allowing them to pack on more power and punch during their time on the field, knowing they can be brought off at any moment with someone equally conditioned to be a big lump of power. By keeping their kick so central in field and denying South Africa's set-piece ball at all, France had not only negated their key strengths but artificially inflated the ball in play time enormously. Even from their own 22, France never once looked for touch in the entire game, keeping the Boks to just 1 line out in the first half and 5 across the entire match, all from penalties. The ball in play's extra impact on the lungs meant the Boks had no choice but to use their bench earlier than expected. Khaleesi off at 45 minutes as just one of 5 substitutes before the 50th. And so, with France dictating the way the game was being played, the Boks needed a way to impose themselves on the game. And calling a scrum from a mark is a beautifully razzy touch. It allows South Africa to bring their strengths into play and also play the game at their own pace. It's a chance to use their strengths and tell France they're not going to play the entire game on their terms. Because it's not that South Africa want to be playing a slow game, much the opposite, but they want to be playing fast on their own terms instead of on France's tempo. And it's easier to do that by grinding to a halt, then accelerating again than trying to tempo the tempo slightly. This is something we can see in their modified kicking game. In the past, the core Bok tactic was the moment something slowed down, usually after 4 or 5 phases, you slow it down even further, and Faf usually sticks it in the air down the tram lines to keep you advancing down the field. However, in true Razzie reinvention of old ideas fashion, we saw a beautifully game-changing new twist on this on Sunday.
Instead of looking to get rid when the attack slows down, when they stop going forward, South Africa looked to kick at the apex of their momentum, at the moment they're most on top, kicking on the front foot. Off that one first half line out here, the Boks run a nice move. The French defence is so built around Fickou. Bokke throw 2 big runners at him and Dante, then the ball bisects them to hit Lebok, who brings Arendse onto Fickou's outside now. He was had to adjust massively. He can make the tackle, but on the back foot, the Boks over the gain line. Eventually, it's some 23 metres made from the eventual pick and goes and offloads as well. And the Boks, having made massive ground, set up immediately. Just 3 forwards to block any charge down attempts, and the others wait wide. They never moved out of position. Most of them coming just straight from the line out. Because if we go back to this previous still, it's not as much fun as rewinding. BL Barret, the far side winger, has slotted into fullback with Ramos pulled into the main line, and it's left France improvising on the far end. Dupont is covering the wing, but the others are line out forwards, just having jogged directly backwards. Both centres fixated on the tackle previous. Lebok kicks at the moment of the most forward momentum, where they made the most ground, where France are the least set. Woki goes up for it, but he's never been in this situation before in his life. No South African even contests for it. They just all sit and wait around Woki. No matter what direction he drops it, they'll be there. And if he doesn't, they can just pick him up and carry him 10 metres backwards. He does drop it right into Diolande's arm, so accelerates into the 22. Gelange makes an unbelievable tackle, but South Africa have gone 50 metres in 19 seconds and worked from here to now here, meaning the French forwards are so slow into position, understandably. Dupont and Gelange then don't listen to each other. Gelange trying to get his 9 to wait on the ruck whilst he works out, but Dupont goes with him and opens a hole for Reinach to fix Woki and put Diolande over for the try. The Boks lent into this tactic all game long. Kick when you're on top. Kick when you've got the most momentum, when the opposition is least set for it. Almost always targeting 20-year-old winger Louis BL Barret, and it got them some great results. It comes off 9 here, but Arendse's score also originates from that exact same idea. A Boks kick immediately off turnover ball, where any other team would spread it wide or look for 50-22, say. BL Barret, instead of setting the main line, watching for a counter-attack, expecting that, and it allows Reinach to hang the ball over his head behind him. He's got no idea where it is. Ramos is never getting there in time, and with Etzebeth, again, a key part of that chase, he just dawdles into LBB's way. The ball misses everyone, allowing Arendse to run it in and put the Boks in front in a game France had utterly controlled up until that point. However, this opportunity came from another South African means of cancelling out France. I previously mentioned South Africa's defence was changed by how dangerous France's pick and goes were, the submerger strategy, the whirlwind approach of offloads and pick and goes from massive forwards one after another. But the thing is, that change itself was a stroke of genius. After a great carry from Aldrit, Gelange here attempts the trademark submerger strategy of a quick pick and go, but Bok defensive captain Dwayne Vermeulen has laid a trap. Similar to how one step was enough to counter many of Ireland's tricks and a few games earlier, Vermeulen and Malherbe start 1 metre behind the ruck here, meaning when this pick and drive comes, when Gelange hits the ground, he's a metre or so away from his support. He's ran away from it, and by the time Malvaca gets there, Vermeulen has ripped the ball and turned it over, and got the Boks onto an attack that results in a try mere moments later for Arendse. South Africa stuck to this trick from all midfield positions throughout the entire game. The 2 props here starting a metre behind to lay the trap, then flattening up once Dupont begins to pass the ball, only getting into a more standardised position in the 22 where every metre suddenly matters all the more now. This made France's go-to means of generating momentum, not to mention sucking in defenders and getting them out of the game, a no-go, a massive ball retention risk. And whilst it only resulted in 1 direct turnover over the course of the game, the knock-on impact was huge. After half-time, France stopped even attempting their trademark attacking structure. structure. They began to play more and more off 10 rather than mixing and matching as usual because they were worried about those forward groups off 9. They were worried about their usual way of playing. Leading to examples like here after those props fighting off a moment earlier. Jalabert delivers a basic ball and phenomenal line speed from Creel, having an amazing game, catches Leibler behind the gain line, and the next phase it happens again. South Africa able to take position fully and set against an improvising French attack. The phrase earn the right to go wide is bullshit and outdated, but it's a legit feature of how France play at their best, only working wide once they're on front foot ball. And Vermeulen's one turnover spooked the French into giving up that right by and large, leading to a much less varied and much less penetrative attack in the second half. Penetrative is a horrible word. I don't want to have to say it again. This was a back and forth of ideas and intention the entire game, one of the most evenly matched matches imaginable between two sets of coaches customizing for the opposition and two sets of players who are so even. And indeed, the eventual winning try, finished by World Player of the Year to be Ibn Etzebeth, is a brilliant flurry of tiny little tricks. Possibly the box three biggest boys set up to tap and carry here, but shuffled to the side last second, changing the point of focus from there to Snyman and then to Vermeulen with his pop pass. France are alert to it, they kind of jam in order to stop this, but so many eyes are just all over watching all of these players, always having to watch that pod to the side, so they shoot offside. Advantage given, and when they pop back up the same way, it's another lovely twist. Vermeulen literally twisting to try and form a maul. France sack it incredibly well right away, but they've piled extra bodies in. These three tricksy one-off plays take full resources to stop, leading to every French forward committing around this ruck in quite a small area, and so stage 4 is set. Pollard sits in the boot here and really sells this is coming out the back. His body language is great. And so Jalabert buys it. He believes it. Eyes are initially on Pollard, but rushes up to try and double job, meaning he engages Etzebeth, then moves on to Pollard once he passes the ball. Except the ball is never passed to Pollard. In order to not just commit to Etzebeth, Jalabert has to stay on his feet, upright, meaning he has no choice but to go high on Ibn bloody Etzebeth. And because he isn't a polar Jalabert, Etzebeth can blow right through him, smashing over the line. All because the box create enough variety, enough doubt in each French defender's mind to mean nobody is ever watching for the most obvious option. Give it to the angriest, biggest man in the world and watch him smash over from 5 metres out. It all fed upwards into a game that was utterly unforgettable. France might be on the short walk home, but South Africa showed exactly the kind of effort it was always going to take to defeat them. And France were no less impressive. This was one of those games where whoever won would have deserved it, and whoever lost earned every ache of the heartbreak, which ultimately is a privilege delivered as pain afforded to those who had the most meaningful love and hope. Because Sunday night's game between France and South Africa to those two nations truly mattered. Rugby might be a silly kids game at the end of the day, but nights like this remind us why we love it and why we all feel it so tightly, especially at these World Cups and in these knockout stages. Destiny's cards might have changed and the endless Antoines might be coming down, but the two sides to whom winning the World Cup would have meant the most gave us a game worthy of every drop of emotion poured into them by those two entire nations over the full last 4 years. We'll miss France, and we'll celebrate South Africa. But above all else, we'll never forget a night where rugby just meant so much more.
Thank you for watching that. I hope you enjoyed it. I am in Clermont, which is lovely, which is so much nicer than Marseille, which is an utter shithole. I hated Marseille. Not just because of going and watching Wales lose, then Fiji come close but not quite pull it off. It's really lovely. I will be at both semi-finals this weekend, so if you do see me, I've probably bought a Springboks shirt by then. Please say hello. In the meantime, I hope you enjoyed watching that. I hope you had a good time with that. I'm sorry about the still situation. It's not ideal. It's far from it. Blame Bill Beaumont as ever. There's plenty more to come. I'm going to try and cover the Ireland-New Zealand game before the next round of quarterfinals. There's a long time going on. We're going to try and do the same preview thing we did last week because it seemed to go down well. People seem to like that. So we'll try and do that kind of deal again. So that's all part of the plan. Try and get as much out as possible this week as we go on, as we move towards the end of the World Cup. And then hopefully by the end of the World Cup, hopefully by the time it's over, we should be okay using footage for the video in the final and so on when we get there. It's all been a very long time. France is big. There's a lot of it. I've been here for a very long time. 8.5 weeks at this point. I don't remember if I have a bed, never mind what it's like to sleep in it, or to sleep in general, but we'll keep trying to put stuff out, and I'll see you very soon for more rugby.